It is your regular edition of the Daily Delivery Podcast. I am Michael Rand. Welcome to Thursday. I only say regular. There's no regular episodes of this podcast. They're all excellent, I would hope. That's the standard I try to set. But I say regular to distinguish it from the late night podcast that Chip Scoggins and I recorded solely on the Timberwolves and Game 1. If you missed that, go back and listen to it. That should be in your podcast player. Went in there in the wee hours of Thursday morning. And thank you all for listening to that already. There'll be like a tiny bit of Wolves talk on this show. Certainly more tomorrow in advance of Game 2 at Target Center. But more so on this show, Rachel Blount from the Star Tribune joins me in a little bit to talk PWHL Minnesota. Yes, the other big playoff series going on in this market right now. They're in the finals. They are tied 1-1 with Boston. Hated Boston. I don't know if they're hated, but there's a lot of rivalries with Boston here, especially because they've stolen so many good players over the years. And in fact, Minnesota and Boston made a very productive trade earlier this year that Rachel and I will talk about. But that series tied 1-1, going back to Xcel Energy Center Friday night in direct competition with Wolves Mavericks Game 2. And Twins, Rangers opening of that playoff series as well. So a lot going on tomorrow night, but Rachel and I will break down that series, how PWHL Minnesota got to this point, and just kind of talk about the league in general and how successful it has been in year one of its existence. Some Twins thoughts coming up here in a minute, a Caitlin Clark nugget for the end of the show. First, though, what I missed, like I said, Twins at the start here. Bobby Nightingale Jr., by the way, will join me on tomorrow's show to talk more Twins ahead of a homestand coming off a weird stretch. I'll talk about that right now. Lost 7 in a row, right? We talked about that a couple days ago, how things were kind of falling apart, shifting. There was a lot of blame game going on, a lot of you did this, you did that, I wanted to throw this pitch. Why'd you talk about that? Kind of stuff going on. A lot of frustration. They were outscored 45-12 over that 7-game span where they lost all of them. 45-12. And they were like, we're better than this. Let's have a players-only meeting. And then they win 2 in a row. Rally Sausage is back. Help them in quotes or not, depending on your belief in the Rally Sausage. But they win 2 in a row, 10-0 that first one, then 3-2 yesterday. Big win for them. Important win, I thought, just to make sure that end that bad road trip and that kind of bad stretch. You win that game 10-0. If you come back and lose a close one, you've kind of any momentum you've gained from 10-0 is gone. So you win 3-2. Simeon Woods Richardson, who I think Bobby and I will talk about a decent amount on Friday's show, good again. He's not striking a lot of guys out, but he's been effective, and especially for a team where I thought pitching depth was going to be an issue, to have him go out there as your number 5 starter and put up zeros, didn't give up any runs yesterday. It was a little bit, dicey at spots, some long outs, some hard hit balls. He's not striking out a lot of guys, so you wonder the sustainability level, but he's by and large avoiding hard contact, and he's getting batters out. That is the name of the game, however you do it. Even in this modern age of analytics, strike guys out, things like that. If you can avoid barrels, that's almost as valuable as getting strikeouts. And he's done a good job of that in a lot of his starts, given them a chance to win, which they did yesterday. The bullpen gave back a little bit. Joan Duran giving up a home run again in the 9th inning, but didn't cost them. They hold on to win 3-2. And, the right to feel better about themselves at this point, to feel like it's not panic mode coming back home. And again, they're flying under the radar a little bit, which is probably just fine for them right now. Like the Wolves are taking up so much airspace and energy and fan enthusiasm. Even the Twins even moved their game time Friday. They're just like, yeah, Wolves, you've got this thing at 7:30. We're going to move our game from, I think, 7 to 6. So understanding where they are in the marketplace right now, like I said, we got Rachel Blount talking about PWHL Minnesota. That's a big story right now as well. So people aren't as keyed into the ups and downs of a weird year. That's all added up to 26-23, a perfectly fine record, a pace for the number of wins that would get them into the wild card conversation at least, and probably would be division leading in a worse division, in a kind of division we might have expected the AL Central to be, and it's been better than expected. But, they've been decent, right? It's just been a weird way to assemble that record. So maybe establishing some sort of consistency on this homestand, feeling like it's not all, 100 miles an hour or 0 miles an hour, scalding hot or freezing cold. Like, can they settle into hey, let's win 6 out of every 10 kind of mindset where it's not win 6, lose 4. That's maybe their next challenge, right? Like sustaining a baseline of good play so that you're not spiraling into these depths, but also not having to rescue yourself with these dramatic, 12-game winning streak, 17-3 stretch, things like that. That is the next challenge for the Twins. Now, the challenge for the Timberwolves, like I said, just a little bit of Wolves talk because I had a leftover thought after talking to Chip last night. The challenge for them is to be better with prosperity. And what I mean by that is I feel like almost every time in this playoffs when they have been kind of in the driver's seat or there's been the expectations, the burden of expectations, every time they've been in that spot in the playoffs, that's when they've faltered, right? Like you go back to the start of the playoffs, the narrative that I was pushing, a lot of people were pushing was, Phoenix, tough opponent. Wow. Like lost to Phoenix 3 times during the regular season. Didn't even, I think, weren't even within double digits in the second half of any of those games. The Wolves were great during the regular season, close to being the 1 seed, but, stumbled against the Suns on the last day, had to settle for being the 3 seed. Now they get this matchup. Could be one and done. What's going to happen next? Blow up the roster if that happens, stuff like that. And then what happens is, even though they're like, the series odds are about even, or even some places seeing Phoenix as a slight favorite, even as the 6th seed, Wolves take kind of an underdog mentality or a you doubted us mentality into that series, and they sweep the Suns, right? Win the first 2 at Target Center, change the narrative, go out to Phoenix, you're kind of playing with house money to continue the analogy, and you close them out there. And Phoenix proved to be a team with more flaws, I think, than they showed during the regular season, and coach got fired, and away they went. But at that point, it felt like the Wolves weren't expected to win that series, or at least it was a kind of a coin flip, or it was an understandable, hey, this is a tough matchup, you got a bad draw, and then they sweep them out. So they're kind of in that situation where it's like the expectations were lower than they generally would have been for a 3 seed that had won 56 games, especially given their playoff history. Then you get to the Denver series, and they're still rolling, and they go out to play the defending champs. They're like, man, this is going to be the hardest series they've faced. How are they going to do against Denver? They think they match up pretty well, but Denver's still the clear favorite in the series. I think it was like 65-35, kind of. Those were the implied odds going in, or at least 60-40. Like Denver's the favorite. They've got the home court. They've got the championship pedigree from last year. Then the Wolves win the first 2, and the whole narrative changes, especially after game 2 when they blow them out. It's like, man, Denver's cooked. Wolves in 4. It's over. And it wasn't everybody. I was tentative on that. I felt still that Denver had another gear. But we were waiting to see, could the Wolves handle prosperity in that moment? Could they close Denver out, or at least make it a comfortable series where it's not going to go any more than 6? They're not going to have to do anything except win home games. And then they didn't, right? They lose the 2 at home, give the home court right back. They get blown out in game 3. Game 4 is more competitive, but they stumble in key moments. And then game 5, they lose again. Everyone's like, okay, nice run, good try. They just weren't ready, but learning experience. So now the pressure's off again. They're not dealing with prosperity. They're dealing with adversity. Come back and clobber Denver in game 6 at the point where everyone's kind of given up on them. Ticket prices for that game much lower on the secondary market. Fans are kind of like one foot on the bandwagon, 1 foot like, I never really believed kind of mentality. They blow them out in game 6. Then anything's possible in game 7, but still you're like, it's back in Denver. Like Denver's probably going to get their act together. Denver goes up 20. Again, adversity, so much adversity. The largest halftime deficit overcome in a Game 7 in NBA history, 20 points by the time they get it in the third quarter. They win that game. It's not expected that they're going to win that game going in. It's certainly not expected when they're down 20. They win that game. So now all of a sudden, They are in the Western Conference Finals, and they get to play Dallas, a good team that's on a very good stretch, a very good streak, but they're the 5 seed, right? Like, yeah, I know they added guys at the deadline. I know they got Luka, they got Kyrie, but this is the 5 seed. The Wolves should win this series, right? You go into it, you're like, this is the favored team. There is no doubt about it, and that is expectations. That's like, okay, not only are you here, you're expected to win now. You are the favored team, and they go into game 1 and they can't get it done. So every time there's been that expectation, they've stumbled. Every time there's been adversity, they have risen to the occasion. So I don't know what that means exactly. I think it bodes well for game 2 now that they've had some adversity in this series. I think they should, if history holds, they are going to be better in game 2 and play better than they did certainly in game 1, where they look kind of flat, kind of tired, where they were frankly, like Chip and I talked about, kind of fortunate to be in the position they were in, even, up 4 with 3 minutes left. It was like right there for them if they could have just put together a good 3-minute stretch, and then they'd put together probably their worst 3-minute stretch, turnovers, couldn't get the stops, and away they go. So I think it bodes well for game 2, but at some point in this series, as I wrote about Thursday, they are going to have to win a game that they are expected to win. They're going to have to handle prosperity, because here, even if they win game 2, Dallas has kind of got the upper hand in games 3 and 4, right? Wolves are going to have to win probably one of those games to stay alive, to feel like they're feeling good about this series. Like if they can get it back here at 2-2, I think they're going to feel pretty good about that. So the first step is obviously win game 2 on Friday, at least split with Dallas in Dallas over those next 2 games, then get it back here. If they do that, game 5 will be a game again where they have that burden of expectation. They won't have that burden in game 2. It'll be adversity, but it's not the burden of expectation. They will go into 3 and 4 knowing they need to split, but again, that's not expectation. That's here's what you need to do, but you're going to be facing adversity. You're in a hostile environment on the road. You're probably going to be the underdog just in the game itself. You're going to have to win with some adversity in that case. But if you're going to win this series, you are going to have to win at least one game that you are expected to win. Might be game 5 when you're tied 2-2. Might be game 7 when you're tied 3-3. Might be both of those games. Might be I don't think it's game 6. I don't think the expectation is there in game 6, but it could be a closeout game if you're going to win this series. Like at some point in this series, they are going to have to win a game that they are expected to win. I don't know that they've done that yet in these playoffs, at least not to the degree that it would be in this Dallas series. That is what I'm waiting to see from them in this postseason.
MGM Wine and Spirits is the choice for savings, service, and a great selection of spirits, premixed cocktails, wines, and of course, ice-cold beers and hard seltzers. With over 30 locations throughout the Twin Cities and beyond, there's an MGM near you. Head to MGMWineandSpirits.com to find a convenient location in your area. Get social. Follow MGM on Facebook and Instagram for all the latest news and trends. Make great moments with MGM Wine and Spirits, your locally owned and operated choice for over 50 years. Save time, save money. Shop MGM.
Let's bring in Star Tribune writer Rachel Blount right now. Rachel, I thought maybe my window to talk to you about PWHL Minnesota was closing. I was so wrapped up in Timberwolves playoff stuff like that, and the way that their season seemed to be going, right? Like the end of their year and the start of the playoffs couldn't have been much worse. And I was like, the moment might have passed. The moment didn't pass. Catch us up, Rachel, on just how this team went from about as cold as you could get to now 2 wins away from winning a championship.
Their fans have got to have whiplash at this point. This team has been so back and forth. They won 5 games in a row going into the PWHL's break for the World Championships. Looked like they might even be the top seed for the playoffs. They came back from the break, lost their last 5 games of the regular season, got outscored, scored seven goals in those 5 games, absolutely just got trounced, had 3 chances, 3 games where all they needed was 1 point to clinch a playoff spot, and they couldn't do it. They needed help from Ottawa to even get into the playoffs as the last seed. They lose 2 shutouts to start their semifinal series against Toronto. And again, everybody now at this point thinks, well, they're dead in the water.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah, I did too. I won't lie. I had given up on him. I figured it's going to be a quick exit. I had my season wrap-up story, kind of in my head already.
Right.
And then suddenly game 2 in Toronto, they started to turn the corner. It was 2-0 loss, but Maddie Rooney played very well in goal. She only gave up one goal. The other one was an empty netter. And Ken Klee, their coach, thought, all right, maybe we are going in the right direction here. They came back and they won the next 2 games in shutouts, beat Toronto very handily, and then won game 5 in Toronto, 4-1. So just had a tremendous run there with Maddie Rooney in goal. They lost the opener of the finals in Boston 4-3, kind of a fluky goal that won it for Boston. Minnesota did play very well in that game and then came back last night to even the series. They had another shutout. They won 3-0 with Nicole Hensley in goal this time. Klee went for the goalie switch and it worked.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of par for the course in Minnesota sports right now with the Wolves have been all over the map in that Denver series. The Twins, we can't get a read on them. They're either the greatest team or the worst team in baseball, depending on the week. So it has been kind of this recent trend, but you're right, with PWHL Minnesota, I feel like there was even wasn't there a game at the end of the regular season where you're right, they only needed 1 point and then they gave up a goal with like a second or two left that would have
Boston, that's exactly right. The team they're facing in the finals now. 2.7 seconds left. It's tied 1-1, and all they need is for the game to get to overtime.
Right.
Yeah. Because if they had lost in overtime, you get a point for an overtime loss in the PWHL. That would have given them the playoff spot. And Hannah Brandt, one of our Minnesotans, scored a goal with 2.7 seconds left. And by the way, that kept Boston's season going as well. They were looking like they were not a playoff team towards the end of the regular season. They had a huge resurgence to get in.
Yeah. So now it's 1-1, coming back to Minnesota. I want to get kind of back into the nitty gritty of the series itself in a minute, but I want to get a bigger picture on just this league right now, what this first year has been like. We talked a lot about the crowds initially, what they had 13,000 plus in the opener at Xcel. Seems like, obviously they're not going to get 13,000 every game, but the playoff crowds have been, every time I've tuned in, even if the crowds are more like in the 3,000 to 4,000 range for some of these games, it is an enthusiastic into the game crowd.
That is a really great read, Mike, because that is what I have seen as well. There was some disappointment in the crowds at Xcel for games 3 and 4 in the semifinals against Toronto. They drew 3,344 for game 3, 2,766 for game 4. That's well under their average. They averaged 7,138 in the regular season. That was second best in the league to Ottawa. But you're absolutely right. Even if the numbers weren't there, this is an insanely passionate fan base. They are buying the merchandise. They are yelling their lungs out at these games. They're bringing their kids. They are very enthusiastic. And even in a fairly small number, you'd think that small of a number in Xcel wouldn't be a great atmosphere. It was a tremendous atmosphere because these folks never stopped cheering. They kept it loud in there through the whole game.
They know what to expect for these next 2 games, 3 and 4. Obviously, this is the finals now. There is unfortunately, a little bit of competition. The Wolves play at Target Center Friday night in game 2, and then they'll be probably overlapping with that third game, although that's in Dallas, a TV game. But do they have a sense of what to expect for these now that, maybe some of that was like fans were kind of like you and I were like, hey, it was a nice run, but they've lost 7 in a row. Is this really is the casual fan going to show up for those games?
Yeah, I think they're hoping for better this time around because you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people figured they were going to lose in the first round. And, it's harder to get excited to go to a game if you think, well, they're going to get lost, they're going to lose, they're going to get knocked out. Series. I don't want to necessarily be there for that. That's not so much fun. And we had really nice weather, some of those first nice days. I think that contributed to the fact it doesn't really feel like hockey season right now. And yeah, there's been some competition. There will still be the competition, as you noted, with the Wolves. But I'd like to think that the team is playing well enough now and has generated enough hope that they could win a championship, that they should get better crowds for games 3 and 4 in the finals.
stylistically or strategically, like what should we look for if you're going to watch games 3, 4, 5, if necessary, back in Boston next week? Like, how is this similar or different to the Toronto series, for instance?
Special teams are turning out to be really big in this series. Minnesota's special teams were very, very poor in the regular season. They were last in the league on the penalty kill, second to last on the power play. Ken Klee tinkered with some things near the end of the regular season, retooled that penalty kill. They have now gone 14 for 14 in the playoffs. And in fact, last night, Boston had 4 power play chances in a row, starting late in the second period and going into the third, and could not generated 2 shots on goal total in these 4 power plays. And their coach said, I quote, she said, "This will be the death of us if we can't put in a power play goal." So if Minnesota's penalty kill can stay hot, that's going to be huge. And Minnesota's power play is improved also. They had 2 key power play goals in their Game 5 win against Toronto. They're generating a ton of chances. And watch for Minnesota's top line as well. They are absolutely lighting it up. Taylor Heisey is centering that line, and she's got Michaela Cava on one side, Kendall Coyne-Schofield on the other. That is a line that is really clicking now. They are fast, they are fierce, and they can really pass the puck beautifully. They had a wraparound goal in Game 1 at Boston that was an absolute beauty. So this is a line that really is a playmaking line, and watch them because they're just great.
Can Ken Klee maybe come and consult with the Wild in the playoffs and get their special teams turned around sometime? Because I feel like it's such a thing in playoff hockey, but you don't usually see a team where you said they were last in the league in penalty kill, and the Wild had like a historically bad penalty kill for a while this year until they got it a little bit better. But like you don't usually see a team then all of a sudden turn that into a strength. So it really must be something that they are, I would imagine it's something they're doing fairly differently, whether it's personnel or how they're attacking it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Klee said that toward the end of the regular season, they made some strategic adjustments there with the way they were approaching the penalty kill. And it's such a night and day difference. I mean, they looked kind of lost, frankly, during the regular season in a lot of their games on the penalty kill. They just appeared to not be confident in their positioning and to not really have a plan. And in the playoffs, going 14 for 14, they have had a number of chances where they've gotten control of the puck. They've gone down and had shorthanded chances. They've made great clears. They're being really aggressive, but aggressive in a smart way, aggressive without losing that positioning that you need to have that's so critical in the penalty kill.
You were mentioning to me before we started recording, too, that these 2 teams made the first trade in league history, and both of those players have paid off huge dividends for both of their success now so far.
Oh, talk about a trade that worked out beautifully for both teams. Minnesota traded forward Susanna Tapany to Boston and got defender Sophie Jakes in return. This trade was made because Natalie Darwitz, the Minnesota GM, felt like they needed an offensive defenseman. They really did not have a defenseman that's super offensive minded, that can jump into the play, quarterback the power play. Lee Steckline does that to some extent, but Sophie Jakes has more offensive firepower than Lee does. So they bring her in, and Sophie did a great job through the end of the regular season. She did exactly what the team brought her in for. And now in the playoffs, she scored twice last night. One was an absolutely beautiful shot from the right circle. She has 5 points in the playoffs. She and her teammate Taylor Heisey are the top scorers in the playoffs in the entire league. They each have 5 points. And Tapany for Boston really gave them some offensive juice that they needed. She scored 2 overtime game-winning goals in their first-round sweep of Montreal and has been very good in the finals as well. So both teams benefited hugely from that trade.
Couple more things, Rachel. Appreciate this as we kind of get set for Friday and Sunday, those home games here. I mean, the league, I think I wrote about this, it was last week, and it's just kind of this odd contrast between like how solid and beyond solid this league is just in their first year, and then some of the it's not funny that they folded, but just some of the stuff around the Minnesota Arena League team and just all the hijinks and just like not being able to get that off the ground. Like this feels so, with the 10-year financial commitment, all the TV impact, just being able to have this feel like it's, ready to go from week one, year one. How does the league feel this year has gone as a whole, and kind of what are some of the next steps as we consider kind of this arc they want to be on?
They are over the moon with how things went this year. So they have at this point more than 40 corporate sponsors.
Wow.
And not just, little companies. They have, Air Canada, Scotiabank, big companies are backing them. They have a deal with Barbie now that is huge, that is seen in the corporate world as quite a coup for a first-year league to get that kind of a sponsorship deal with a major consumer brand. They have more than 100,000 subscribers to their YouTube channel. Their social media presence is absolutely enormous, millions of impressions on social media. They ended up attendance-wise with almost 400,000 over 72 games. So they averaged about 5,500, which they considered a success. And bear in mind, Minnesota was the only team that played regularly in an NHL arena. Several of these teams were playing in arenas that held 3,000 people. Okay. So, attendance was suppressed to some degree by the size of the arenas. And they ended up breaking that attendance record multiple times through the season. You had mentioned earlier, Minnesota in their home opener drew 13,316, set the women's attendance record for professional hockey. Well, by the end of the season, there was a game in Montreal versus Toronto, that drew 21,105. Wow. So this league has really resonated with people. And I think part of the reason for the success is it's legit money behind it. I mean, Mark Walter is a very committed owner, and they set it up properly with the league owning and operating these teams right now. They're not selling franchises. They're making sure it's all in-house, so they have some control over this. Billie Jean King as the person that got this thing rolling. So you've got a well-known, legitimate person when you go out, say, to sell your corporate sponsorships. Imagine how many doors the name Billie Jean King must open up.
Yeah.
So many things going for them. They have made it very clear that it's going to be several years before they are financially walking on their own 2 feet.
Yeah.
Yes, that they will be operating at a loss for a while here simply because of the startup costs are so huge. But they are hopeful that this will become a self-supporting league, and eventually these franchises can be sold to local owners. There will be expansion sometime. They do not have a timetable for that, but they are looking for that. And interestingly, this year, they did a couple of games in cities that are not in the league. They did a game in Pittsburgh and one in Detroit. Both of those drew really, really well and got a lot of attention. So that reinforced the league's feeling that expansion can happen sooner rather than later. Not right away, but they do feel like there are cities out there that are going to be eager to have these teams fairly soon.
And then you get nicknames next year, more of that kind of branding, identity, things like that, merchandising.
Logos. Everybody is still waiting on those nicknames and logos. I mean, I certainly am. I know it's in the grand scheme of things, maybe it's kind of a small thing, but this is what we want as fans, right? We need a nickname, we need a logo.
Yes, but the more important things are financial support. TV, you got to have the media piece figured out in this day and age. It's so important. You can't not be able to show your games to your fans. You can't just rely on whatever else it is people showing up. You've got to be able to have that, and they've got that nailed down in multiple ways.
Oh, what's been great, Mike, is, they were on Bally Sports North in this market. Well, now, I'm a Comcast subscriber, so I'm not getting Bally Sports North, but they stream all their games on YouTube, and it's the broadcast that you would see on television.
Yeah.
It's the beautiful, polished, professional broadcast with the taped pieces and everything. So, I've just got my YouTube app on my big TV. Right. You just fire that up and watch it and no interruption whatsoever. That was brilliant. Whoever decided that, absolutely brilliant. They have circumvented this problem of well, gosh, the cable provider is in a dispute sports channel, and now you can't see your team.
Well, should be a fun one Friday night at Xcel Energy Center. Well, two like huge playoffs there. You got this, you got the Wolves going on. It's a good time to be a Minnesota sports fan. Rachel Blount, appreciate the time. Follow the coverage in Star Tribune, startribune.com, and we will talk to you soon.
Sounds great, Mike. Thank you.
Great stuff from Rachel. Follow all of our coverage of PWHL Minnesota, Star Tribune, startribune.com. Like I said, a busy Friday at home. PWHL Minnesota at Xcel Energy Center, Twins at Target Field, and of course, Wolves, Dallas at Target Center, a 7:30 tip. All those things at night. Should be a fun night. Maybe not so much for our copy desk, but a fun night to be a Minnesota sports fan. Let's finish with the cooler. Not a fun time to be Caitlin Clark. It is, I guess, but not fun to be 0-5. Indiana Fever are 0-5 after losing to Seattle the other night. That's as many losses as Caitlin Clark took her entire senior year, her entire final season at Iowa. Final season, let's call it that, since she could have come back if she wanted to. Final season at Iowa. They were 34-5, lost the championship game to South Carolina. That's as many losses as she took in 39 games now in 5 games. It's going to be a learning curve, growth experience, however you want to put it. But I don't think a lot of people realized, how hard this was going to be, how hard it was not only going to be for her to succeed individually, but for her to elevate her team. I think we have a very clear picture now that there's some growth she needs in her game, and there's certainly growth that is going to happen. This is a big leap from college to the pros, and we are getting a very clear picture of that right now. Not saying it's not going to happen. I'm sure she's going to make adjustments. She's a tremendous player, a tremendous talent, bringing shine to this league still, even as they're 0-5. But if you were questioning whether there was going to be an adjustment or if she was just going to roll right in here and just keep doing all the Caitlin Clark things, she's doing some of them, but it hasn't resulted in wins yet, and she still has some things to figure out about this next level as well. That will do it for me today. Like I said, Bobby Nightingale Jr. on Friday's show. Bonus episode after Friday's Game 2 as well. That will take you into the weekend. I think Chip will be joining me again on that one, Chip Scoggins. If you missed the Game 1 bonus podcast, go back and listen to that. Until then, until tomorrow, I am Michael Rand. Have a great rest of your Thursday, and we will talk to you very soon.